If the 2024 election were held today, neither Trump nor Harris would be clearly favored to win the election. The betting odds are even, and the polls show Harris up by a national margin that far from guarantees her an electoral college victory. With less than a week to go until the de facto first presidential debate in Philadelphia, let's take a look at the 2024 electoral map based on the newest polls released in all 50 U.S. states. We'll go by poll closing time here, so starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on election night, the polls will close in Vermont, Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, and in most counties across the state of Florida. Let's start in Vermont. The only poll released here comes via the University of New Hampshire, surveyed between August 15th and 19th, and it has Harris leading by 41 points. No surprise here, Vermont is arguably the bluest state in the nation. It goes down as safe blue on our map. We don't yet have any polls in Indiana or Kentucky, yet since both states voted for Trump by more than 15 points in 2016 and 2020, we can strongly assume that any future polls will show the former president leading by a comfortable margin. They're both safe Republican. Our first competitive state is Virginia. Biden became the first Democrat to carry Virginia by a double-digit margin since 1944. But the latest poll released by Roanoke College, also from mid-August, has Harris up by 3 points. A notable underperformance here for the vice president is Trump continues to poll closely in Virginia even after Biden dropped out. It will lean blue for Harris on our map. Down in South Carolina, no new polls here, but Trump should hold the state easily after winning by double-digit margins in the last two elections. Now, Georgia is the key battleground to watch at 7 p.m. on election night. The closest race in the 2020 election, Joe Biden carried it by 0.2%, thanks to extraordinary black turnout in and around Atlanta. Now here in 2024, Trump had been gaining on Biden in early polls among black voters, but Kamala has unsurprisingly pulled back at some of those losses for Democrats. As you also see, the top-line numbers tightening as well. The latest poll via Insider Advantage here, surveyed between August 29th and 31st, has the two candidates tied at 48% apiece. The previous three polls had shown Harris in front, yet Trump still leads ever so slightly in the overall average. Back on our map here, we'll place Georgia in the Tossup category. The betting odds over on BetOnline do have Trump as a slight favorite in Georgia, which does make sense given the overall electoral odds are split. As if Harris does manage to hold Georgia in the Democratic corner, there is just no path to 270 for Trump, whereas Harris would still have a shot without it. Let's close things out, though, at 7 p.m. in Florida. 30 electoral votes, the third most in the nation. No other state is trending harder and faster to the right, though, as Trump did carry the state by 3.4% in 2020, making it one of just 5 states where he actually did better than 2016. Republicans followed that up in the 2022 midterms with a sweep of the governor and Senate races, here by 19% for Ron DeSantis, and then for Senator Marco Rubio by 16%. Now in 2024, we do see Trump leading in every single poll, including this latest one by Florida Atlantic University that has him leading by 3 points, so right around his 2020 margin, 50% to 47% among more than 1,000 likely voters, and this will translate to a lean Republican rating on the electoral map. Now let's proceed to the 7:30 p.m. poll closing here in Ohio, West Virginia, and North Carolina. We don't even need to talk about West Virginia, no polls yet. It is one of the reddest states in the nation. As for the state of Ohio, once a key bellwether, it is now no longer considered in play, really, for Democrats, as you see the two polls released since Biden's dropped out has Trump up 8.5 points on average. That's right around his 2016 and 2020 margins in Ohio, both 8%. And so back on our map, the Buckeye State continues to occupy the likely Republican category. Down in North Carolina then, 16 electoral votes, a perennial battleground that has now consistently voted Republican in federal elections over the last decade. Trump's 1.5-point victory in 2020 is one of 8 straight races for president and Senate decided by less than 6 points here in North Carolina. Now, as for the 2024 presidential race, the last 4 polls have Trump up by exactly 1 point over Harris, including this most recent one by East Carolina University. with a sample size of 920 likely voters surveyed right at the end of August. And so back to the map, the Tar Heel state will tilt towards the former president. Alrighty, now through the first two poll closings here, Donald Trump has a commanding lead in the race to 270 with 95 to 16. Still, we do have 411 electoral votes remaining, with the largest poll closing of the night coming up right here at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. All of these states in yellow see their polls close here, with the key races to watch being Maine and New Hampshire up here in the Northeast, along with Pennsylvania and Michigan in the Rust Belt, and then Texas. Let's start with the states where we don't yet have any polls. Trump is certain to win in Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee, while Kamala Harris, on the other hand, should easily hold Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. As for our two lone competitive races up here in New England, Maine, and New Hampshire, neither state has voted for a Republican presidential candidate since at least the 2000 election, although they were both very close in 2016 as Clinton just narrowly held them over Trump by less than 3 points each. They then shifted back hard towards Biden in 2020 by 7 points in New Hampshire and then 9 in Maine. Now, two polls have been released in Maine this cycle, the latest of which has Kamala Harris leading by 17 points among just less than 1,000 likely voters. Splitting that down by congressional districts, the vice president is up 28 points in the more urban and Democratic-friendly 1st district, and then 5 in the 2nd. So going back to our map, the statewide contest is safe blue, as is the 1st district, while the 2nd leans this way. Then in New Hampshire, the latest poll has her leading by 5 points. This was surveyed by the University of New Hampshire, with more than 2,000 likely voters in the sample. And back on our map, New Hampshire is leaning blue. Next is Pennsylvania, the keystone state in name and in practice. Its 19 electoral votes are the most significant prize on the map. Trump carried this key battleground by less than a point in 2016, and then Biden returned it into the Democratic column in 2020 by a little more than a point. Now in 2024, the latest survey via Trafalgar Group has Trump leading by 2 points, 47% to 45%, though since Trafalgar is a Republican-aligned pollster, I'm going to average out the two most recent surveys to include the Hill and Emerson College, which shows a tied race. Now this means that the margin we'll use to classify Pennsylvania here in this video becomes R+1. That is still a tilt GOP rating here for former President Trump. And then just to the west in Michigan, 15 electoral votes, another one of our key swing states that swung from Trump in 2016 to Biden in 2020. It is the bluest of those 6 states, though, as Joe Biden carried Michigan by almost 3 points in 2020, and Democrats have followed that up with a string of strong Democratic performances since then down the ballot as well. The latest poll here, though, via Trafalgar Group, is a tie, and the previous survey by the Hill and Emerson College, again, is D+3. So then, the margin for rating purposes becomes D+1.5, meaning that Michigan tilts blue on our map. Now, Michigan, in all effects and purposes, is a must-win for the vice president. There's just no path to 270 for Democrats without it, considering that the other 5 swing states are likely to vote further to the right, and it becomes all the more important if Trump does take back Pennsylvania, in which case there is just no more room for error. Shifting over to the Midwest, Illinois and Missouri could not be more opposite. Illinois is a solid blue state, having last voted Republican in 1988, and the latest poll here has Harris up 16 points over Trump via ActiVote. So 19 electoral votes are added to the Harris tally here, whereas Missouri is a solid red state. Trump plus 15 in 2020, the latest poll, also via ActiVote, surveyed throughout August, has Trump up 17 points. So that means Missouri is solid Republican. Now, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district does actually close its precincts at 8 p.m., as it is located in the central time zone, whereas much of the rest of the state will remain open until 9 p.m. Now, this Omaha-based district is rapidly left trending. It did vote for Biden by 7 points in 2020, and we do have a couple of polls here. The latest via Survey USA with split ticket has Harris up 5 points in the district, while she trails by 17 statewide. 47% to 42% is the split here in Nebraska 02, right around where I expect it to be come November, and it does mean that back on our map, we'll place it in the lean blue category. Closing out the 8 p.m. poll closing here in Texas, an emerging battleground is Joe Biden's 46.5% vote share was the highest for Democrats since the Lone Star State last went blue in 1976. That said, the party may have peaked a little too soon here, as Republicans have made significant gains among Hispanic voters down in South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, which is likely to keep the state just out of reach for Democrats for the foreseeable future. The latest poll via the University of Houston has Trump up 13 points, more than double his 2020 margin, and more than enough to place Texas in the safe Republican category. Now, the next poll closing time comes very quickly at 8:30 p.m., although the polls are only closing in the state of Arkansas, which is as safe Republican as it gets. No new polls, and it was Trump plus 28 in 2020. Jumping forward to 9 p.m., that's when we reach peak intrigue on election nights. I call it Battleground Central here, as the polls close in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Plus, of course, the Empire State of New York and a smattering of solid red states across the middle of the country. Those include North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska's statewide contest, plus the 1st and 3rd districts, Iowa, Kansas, and Louisiana. No new polls in any of these states, but Trump won them comfortably in 2020. As for Kamala Harris, she should easily win in Colorado, one of the fastest blue trending states in the nation. It did vote for Biden by 14 points in 2020, and we have yet to see any polls here in 2024. Then up and over in New York, a consistent blue state since 1984, Biden won it by 23 points in 2020. The latest poll via ActiveVote has Harris up by 17%, and you can see that she is led by at least 10 in every other poll as well. So New York is a safe blue state on our map, leaving us with the more interesting states now at this hour. Let's start in Wisconsin, the last state in the core Rust Belt trio here with Michigan and Pennsylvania that could very well once again play kingmaker this November. Remember, had Hillary Clinton just held these 3 states in the blue column in 2016, Trump would never have been elected president. And then in 2020, had Trump held them against Biden, he would still be serving a second term right now. Alrighty, with Pennsylvania and Michigan split here, Wisconsin also becomes all the more important. It has been decided by less than a point in 4 of the last 6 elections, including 2016, when it was Trump plus 0.7. And then in 2020, it Biden plus 0.6. Now in 2024, polling has generally been strongest for Biden and now Harris in this state. As you can see here, the VP does lead in Real Clear Polling's latest average, but both of the last 2 polls from Trafalgar and The Hill have Trump up by a point. Obviously, still within the margin of error, but could this be the start of a new trend, as Harris had previously led in 6 of the last 8 polls in Wisconsin? Back on our map, it will tilt towards Trump, joining Pennsylvania, and now at this point, it becomes incredibly hard to see a path to victory for Harris, as Trump is only 24 votes shy of 270 at 246. Now, the final hole in the Midwest region is Minnesota, the home state of Harris's running mate, Tim Walz. It surprisingly holds the longest active blue streak in the nation, as it has not voted for a Republican since Nixon in 1972 in his 49-state landslide. It is, more often than not though, quite competitive. As you can see here, Clinton just barely kept the streak alive in 2016 against Trump by 1.5%. Now in 2024, the latest poll via a local news station in Minneapolis with Survey USA has Harris up by 5 points. The previous survey was Harris plus 6. This latest poll would be a 2-point underperformance relative to Biden's 7-point margin in 2020, but still a comfortable lean blue rating for the VP and her hopeful VP here in Minnesota on the map. Let's head on over to the Southwest, though, starting in New Mexico, a reliably Democratic-leaning state in recent years. The latest poll from Emerson College and The Hill has Harris up 10 points, right around Biden's 2020 margin here. Now, this does mean that New Mexico joins its neighbor, Colorado, in the safe blue category. As for the state of Arizona now, our final state at this poll closing, a key battleground as Biden became just the second Democrat to carry Arizona in the last 70 years, 49.4% to 49.1%, the second closest race in 2020. Now in 2024, Trump had been polling far ahead of Biden before the president dropped out. However, again, with Harris, we see another incredibly close race. Trump leads by exactly a point in the Real Clear polling average, the same margin as the most recent survey taken by Insider Advantage among 800 likely voters. Again, very much within the margin of error, but yet again, we also go back to our map and place Arizona down as tilting towards Trump based on that latest poll. 9 states to go now across the West. Our next poll closing is here at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That's when the first votes will start to trickle in out of Montana, Idaho, Utah, and Nevada. One thing I should note, though, for you guys here is that the first votes in Arizona don't usually drop until after 10 p.m., as there are complications with time zones and Native American tribes. You also shouldn't expect a whole lot of votes in Nevada for at least another hour, as they just have a miserably slow process. Alas, going back to our map, let's go ahead and place Idaho and Utah in the safe GOP column. Trump should win both easily, and we don't yet have any polls. We do have a couple of polls, though. In Montana, both are safe margins at 15 and 23 points. That comes right around Trump's previous margins at 21% in 2016 and 16% in 2020. So it should come as no surprise that Montana is also safe for Trump. Now, Nevada is the lone battleground at this hour. With 6 electoral votes, it does not necessarily hold the same electoral weight as the other key states, but it should be just as closely contested between the two campaigns. As while Biden did carry it by 2.4% in 2020, it has shifted 5 points to the right since Obama's 7-point win in 2012. Republicans also managed to flip the governor's office in 2022 and received more votes for U.S. House than Democrats for the first time in decades. Now in 2024, perhaps no other state had trended more favorably to Trump while Biden was still in the race. But again, we now see Harris often polling ahead of Trump in Nevada. As per Real Clear Polling's latest average, she does maintain a lead of less than a point, though again, we see the latest poll from Insider Advantage showing Trump up 1 among 800 likely voters. So that is yet another tilt GOP margin for Trump on our map. And as you can see here, he has eclipsed 270 electoral votes with 277, leading Harris's 164. That is a big gap between the two candidates that will narrow significantly here, with the Pacific Coast Blue Wall states closing at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Washington, Oregon, and California, these states have consistently voted Democrat since 1988, most recently backing Biden by more than 15 points each. We do not yet have a poll up here in Washington, but we do in Oregon, where the latest survey from a Republican-sponsored pollster has Biden leading by just 5 points. This is from Hoffman Research, and it was polled in late July, so not only is it a bit of an outlier, but it's also quite dated. And since we don't have a previous poll to adjust for the fact that this is an R-aligned poll, we'll have to resort to averaging it out with the 2020 margin to get D plus 10.7, another safe blue margin here in Oregon. And then down in California, Kamala's home state, the only poll surveyed by the LA Times and UC Berkeley's IGS has her leading Trump by 25 points among almost 4,000 likely voters. A massive sample size there. It's no surprise California is safe Democrats. Now, just those 3 states alone catapult Harris up to 238, 39 votes shy of Trump now, though obviously still not enough. Our final 2 states are the non-continental states of Alaska and Hawaii, where polls close at midnight Eastern. We have yet to see a single poll in either state, but Hawaii is safe blue at Biden plus 30 in 2020, while Alaska is safe Republican as Trump won it by 10 points in 2020. That was the narrowest margin for a Republican in decades, but he is expected to overperform his 2020 margins pretty much everywhere. So that completes this edition of the 2024 electoral map based on the latest poll taken in all 50 states. Donald Trump is projected to win a second non-consecutive term in the White House with 280 electoral votes over Harris's 242, with 16 electoral votes in Georgia occupying the Tossup category as of this latest update. Now, feel free as always to let me know what you think of this map in the comments below. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below as well, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.